Once upon a time, on a warm summer day, there was a girl named Rayna who was visiting the beach with her family. Rayna skipped along the sandy edge of the shore with her feet splashing in the cool water as her parents and little brother Ammar strolled behind. And to anyone passing by, it would seem like just another beautiful day at the beach, but Rayna was about to discover something extraordinary. Something hidden beneath her toes that would forever change the course of her life. As Rayna and Ammar's parents were sitting on the beach, the two kids decided to hike to the top of a sand dune nearby. And when they got to the top, the kids sat down, and Rayna looked at the sand and saw something glistening that caught her eye. She brought her head down to get a closer look, and there, nestled among the millions of other ordinary grains of sand, was a single speck that shimmered like pure gold. Rayna scooped up a handful of the sand with the golden grain right in the center, and as her brother watched on, she carefully plucked the golden grain of sand and held it up to the sun. And as they both looked at it closer, they saw that it sparkled magically. And with such a tiny object in her hand, Rayna knew she had to be careful not to lose it. So she and her brother walked back to where their family was sitting, and Rayna opened up her empty water bottle and carefully placed the golden grain of sand inside and put the lid back on. And that evening, Rayna emptied the sand onto her desk where she found that single grain of golden sand. Thank goodness she didn't lose it. With such a tiny object, she was afraid she was going to lose it, so she went and grabbed a small, resealable plastic bag, and she just dropped it right in there so she could keep better track of where it was. And the next day, Rayna put the plastic bag with the grain of sand into her pocket as she headed off to school, and as the day went on, some very strange things started happening. When Rayna got to class, she couldn't find her folder. Oh no, did she leave it at home? Oh, why did this have to happen? She felt so embarrassed. Oh, she wished she could find it. But then suddenly, the folder just appeared at the top of her cubby station at school. Well, that was strange. Was it there this whole time? Why didn't she see it before? Well, after she got settled down and was sitting in class, she started getting kind of tired. She looked out the window and wished it was recess time. And then, out of nowhere, the bell rang. Everyone turned their heads in surprise. Even the teacher looked confused. It wasn't actually time for recess already, was it? But they could hear the sound of all the kids running through the halls and going out to the playground. Nobody asked any more questions. All her classmates just ran outside to play. And when Rayna got outside, she was having so much fun she didn't want recess to ever end. And the funny thing was, it didn't seem to end. 20 minutes went by, and then 30 minutes, and then 40 minutes, and then an hour, and then 2 hours. Rayna was starting to wonder if recess would ever end. She was starting to get kind of tired. She looked around the playground and saw that all the other kids were getting pretty tired too. A lot of them were sitting down, and some of them were even laying down on the ground because they were exhausted. It had been recess for over 2 hours. Well, Rayna had had her fill of recess time. She was ready to go inside. And then all of a sudden, right after she had that thought, the bell rang. And all the kids on the playground slowly got up and started walking back into the building. And when Rayna got back to class, she could not do any more schoolwork. She was so tired, all she wanted to do was go home. And then all of a sudden, the bell rang again. What in the world is going on here? It had only been 3 minutes since recess ended, and they were already going home? And then Rayna looked up at the clock and saw it was still early in the day. Why was school out already? This didn't make any sense. But nobody else in the classroom questioned it, and her teacher didn't even act confused. So they all just went outside and got their backpacks and went to get on the bus and meet their parents. But since school had gotten out so early, None of the parents were even there yet. The buses weren't even there. Why did they get out so early? This didn't even make any sense. So all the kids just sat around outside with nowhere to go. And Rayna just sat down and wished her mom would come and pick her and her brother up already. And then all of a sudden, 2 seconds later, she looked out at the road, and there was her mom. Nobody else's parents had even come yet, but her mom was there. Rayna's mom pulled right up next to her, and Rayna jumped into the car, and her mom said, "Where's Ammar, Rayna?" And Rayna didn't know where he was, but she wanted to go home. Oh, she wished he would show up already. And then she looked up at the door of the school, and sure enough, there he was. What an unusual day this had been. Rayna thought back to all that had happened, and she started to see a pattern. As strange as the events of the day had been, one thing was true. Everything she wished for had happened almost immediately after she thought of it. Even when she didn't even know she was wishing for something, when she just thought of something she wanted, there it was. And then Rayna remembered the golden grain of sand in her pocket. And when they got home, she ran to her room and she pulled the grain of sand out of her pocket. And at that moment, Ammar walked in and said, "Oh, cool. You still have that golden grain of sand from the beach?" And Rayna said, "Shh, you can't tell anyone, Ammar." "Well, why not? What's the big deal?" he said. "I think this grain of sand is magical. Ever since we found this yesterday, and ever since I put this in my pocket this morning, everything I think about comes true." "What? Seriously? That's so awesome. Let's test it out," said Ammar. "Ask for a Power Ranger car. I really want one of those." So Rayna said, "Okay, I want a Power Ranger car." And the two of them stood there staring at each other, but nothing happened. Then Ammar looked down in disappointment. "Well, I guess it doesn't work for me." And he turned around to walk out of the room, and then as soon as he stepped out into the hallway, he tripped over something and fell to the ground. "What?" he said. But when he turned his head, he saw that he had just tripped over a Power Ranger car. Exactly what he told Rayna to ask for. "No way, it really works," he said as he picked up his new toy and ran to his room to play with it. Meanwhile, Rayna was just as surprised as Ammar was. This was the first time she had actually made a wish out loud and asked for a toy. And then there it was. Wow, just imagine what else she could ask for. This is incredible. Rayna's mind was racing with ideas, and as Rayna held the golden grain of sand, her brother rushed back into the room with a worried look on his face. Rayna? Look outside." She ran to the window and looked outside, and she gasped. The sky was dark, swirling with strange clouds, and the wind began to pick up, and even the ground seemed to tremble. "What's going on out there?" Rayna held the golden grain of sand tightly in her hand as she and Ammar stared out the window. The sky had turned an eerie shade of purple, with dark, swirling clouds blocking out the sun. And the wind started to howl, and the trees started bending over as if they were about to snap. "What is happening out there?" Rayna whispered, clutching the sand tighter. She could feel it starting to grow warmer in her hand, as if it had a life of its own. And just then, they heard a loud knock on their front door. And Rayna and Ammar jumped, startled. "Who could that be?" Ammar asked, with his eyes wide with worry. They rushed downstairs, and when they opened the door, they saw an old man standing there. His clothes made him look like some kind of magician or wizard of some kind, and he leaned heavily on a twisted wooden cane. And his eyes, although kind, seemed to know far more than they should. He looked at Rayna and smiled faintly. "Oh, dear, it seems as though you've been making wishes, young lady." Rayna froze, feeling the weight of the grain of sand in her hand. She hadn't told anyone about it. The only other person who knew about this was Ammar. How did this strange man know about it? But before she could speak, the old man tilted his head slightly and added, "Be careful, child. Every wish comes at a price, even those granted by the sands of time." But that's a story for another day.